You know those Excel functions you've been using for years? They used to be essential, but thanks to new functions, we now have simpler, faster and better ways to get the job done. I've created an example file to show you side-by-side comparisons you can download from the link in the video description. So let's dive straight in. First up, VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP has been around forever, but it's pretty limited. You can only look up to the right of the lookup value. You have to hard code the column number. Here you can see this formula will return the value in the 5th column of the table, which is our in-stock column. But if your table structure changes, your formula breaks. For example, if I insert a column here, you can see the formula now returns 0. Let's Ctrl-Z to undo that. Plus, it's error prone. If you forget to enter false in this last argument here, it's going to return an approximate match. So instead of returning 200 for VG003, we get 60. So you can see it's returning the result for oranges, product code FR005, which is clearly wrong. Let's Ctrl-Z to undo that. However, from Excel 2021 onward and with Microsoft 365, we can now use XLOOKUP instead. The first argument is the same, it's the lookup value. Next, I specify my lookup array, and this can be left or right of the column you want returned. I'm looking up the product code. And then for the return array, there's no need to count column numbers because it's a reference, so I'm returning the stock. Plus, you can add a custom not found message without needing the if error function. For example, here I can return a blank if it's not found. Let's see, we get the same result, but now if I insert a column, it doesn't break my formula. That's not all. XLOOKUP also replaces HLOOKUP. It can return multiple results and more. So check out the comparison table here and the deep dive lesson linked to in the file download. Next, concat. The concat function was an improvement over concatenate because it let you join ranges, but it still couldn't skip blanks or insert separators easily. For example, the formula to join the first, middle and last names together is cumbersome, and it can't handle any missing values, as you can see here, where we have 2 spaces between Emily and Johnson. The better solution is text join. Text join lets you specify a separator, like a space or comma. I'm going to use a space between each name. The next argument lets you automatically ignore blanks, so I'll select true for that. And then I simply reference the cells or cell range that I want to join. Close parentheses on text join, copy it down, job done, way more professional looking output with less work. That's not all. We can also create a list of names with text join. For example, I want to create a list of the first names. We'll separate them with a comma and a space. We'll ignore empties, and that will allow me to select these names and allow for more names to be added. Close parentheses, there's my list of names. We can add another one, and it automatically updates. I think you'll agree it's much more versatile. By the way, I've also included a comparison table in the file download for reference. Now let's look at match, which is often used with index to find the position of an item in a list, but it only searches top to bottom. With xmatch, you get more flexibility. It starts with the same lookup value. In this case, we're looking up apple. Where are we looking it up? In this range of cells. And because exact match is the default, there's no need for match mode or search mode. I can simply close parentheses and I get the same result. You can also search from the bottom up. So again, let's look up apple. Notice in the lookup array there's multiple instances of apple. Next we have the match mode. I can skip it because the default is exact match, but you can see there's lots of options here. And then for search mode, I want to search from the bottom up, so search last to first, which is -1. Close parentheses, and I get 5. It's also fully compatible with dynamic arrays, plus it has some other benefits, so check out the comparison table in the example file. Let's move on to subtotal. Subtotal is great when you want to summarize visible rows after filtering. So for example, here we can exclude banana and my subtotal updates, but it chokes if you have errors in your data. So let's force an error, and you can see subtotal can't handle it. And that's where the aggregate function comes in. You can see it offers more functions, including large, small, percentile, and so on. Now I want to sum, so I want option number 9. It also has a long list of items I can ignore, including errors like div, as well as hidden rows. So let's go with 7, tab to insert it, And then I simply reference the range of cells that I want to sum. Let's move that out the way, close parentheses, and I get 330, making it smarter when dealing with messy data like this. You can also do things like return the second largest visible sales value. So here, if I want the second largest, I want 14 for large, then 7 because I want to ignore hidden rows and error values. And then my array is this range of cells here. That's my table. Let's move that out the way. And then because I've used an array function, I need to specify the position in the array. Remember, I want the second largest item, so that's 2. Close aggregate, and we get 110. And if we filter out apple and put banana back in, you can see it updates to now return 90 for banana as the second largest item in the visible array. So you can see aggregate is simply a better, more powerful version of subtotal. Before we move on, if you're watching this and thinking, I just want someone to walk me through all the new formulas step by step with examples I can actually use, that's exactly what I do in my Advanced Excel Formulas course. I'll show you how to write cleaner formulas, automate more of your work, and build spreadsheets that don't need constant maintenance. It's become a go-to resource for people who want to finally feel in control of their spreadsheets without all the trial and error. And right now, there's a 20% discount available on all my courses until May 15. You'll find the link in the description and pinned comment if you'd like to check them out. Splitting text with left, mid, find, and len function combos can be mind-bending. Thankfully, it's in the past. We now have text after and text before. Text after gets everything after a delimiter. So in this case, we want everything after the hyphen and a space. Close double quotes. There's no need to calculate character positions manually. Close parentheses, and job done. As you might have guessed, text before gets everything before the delimiter. Here I want everything before the comma, close parentheses, and we get Sydney. They're easier to build, easier to troubleshoot, and way easier to read. Now you may have noticed there are loads more options available. We can specify the instance number, match mode, match end, and if not found. Plus, there's also a text split function that you should try. So take some time to check out the deep dive tutorial and the comparison table. Next is indirect. Indirect used to be a magic trick for building dynamic references, but it has some significant downsides. For one, it's volatile, meaning it recalculates all the time and can slow down your file. It breaks easily if sheet names change, and it hides errors that would normally help you debug. In most cases, better options exist. For example, here I've got a table with quarterly sales by region. Now in the past, if I wanted to switch between summing sales for Q1 and Q2, I might use the indirect function like this. You can see here that to support indirect, I've had to name these columns Q1 sales and Q2 sales to match the names in my drop-down list here. But now instead of indirect, we can use the switch function. So we're going to sum. What is the range of cells or numbers we want to sum? Well, that depends on the quarter selected in the drop-down list. So we'll use switch to take the name selected here, and if it's Q1 sales, we'll return the table sales. That's the name of this table here, and I want Q1 sales. Close my square brackets, comma, and if Q2 sales is selected, then I want my table called table sales and the column Q2 sales. Close my square brackets, close switch, close sum, and we get the same result, but without volatility. Another way we can achieve the same result is with XLOOKUP. So we're going to look up this name here in my table headers and return the respective column. Close parentheses on XLOOKUP, close sum, and there you go, the same result, less work and no volatility. Now, indirect still has a few niche uses like dynamic sheet references, but in most cases better options exist, so check out the table here that lists the common uses and the modern solutions available. And finally, offset. Offset was a go-to tool for creating dynamic ranges, but it's volatile just like indirect, and it can cause performance problems in bigger workbooks. For example, here I've used the offset function to allow this XLOOKUP to dynamically extend past the bottom of this table, allowing for more records to be added. But the new trim ref dot operator has made offset obsolete for dynamic ranges. Let's take a look. Now we can simply XLOOKUP the product, and I'm going to select all of the records and allow for more to be added. And then after the colon, simply type a dot to trim the empty rows, comma, what am I looking up? The product. What am I returning? The category. Close parentheses on XLOOKUP. And you can see it's only calculating for the rows that I have data, but if I add a new record, let's just copy this one from above, you can see it automatically includes that new record without me having to edit the formula. Of course, if your data is in an Excel table, then you can get the same results using the table structured references. So we're going to look up this value here in this column and return the category. Close parentheses, press enter, and because it's in a table, it automatically copies the formula down every row. So if I add a new record, let's just copy this one down, the table automatically copies the formula down. So why would you use the trimref operator if you can just use tables? The short answer is because tables cannot take formulas that spill, and I demonstrate this in the deep dive lesson linked to in the example file, so be sure to check it out. Now if you're thinking, okay, but what about all the really new stuff like formulas that didn't even exist a few years ago? I've got you covered. In this video right here, I walk through the next-gen functions that completely change the way you use Excel. Things like filter, unique, sequence, all the dynamic tools that make formulas feel way less manual. So click here and I'll show you how they work step by step.